What if Naruto had Homelander's powers? Now, I know you guys are probably wondering two things. Number one, how the heck would that work? And two, what's up with all of these what ifs? When are you going to actually finish one? And my answer to both of these are relax. Hold on. Time's got this. Here's how I'm going to do this. Orochimaru heard all the commotion happening in the Leaf Village. It was utter chaos. He was exploring the woods originally for fun, but whatever was happening in the Leaf Village caught his attention. His appearance at the moment looked like any other shinobi, so he could sneak in with absolutely no worry. When he found there was no one guarding the entrance and exit to the village, he laughed. This was going to be too easy. He rushed into the village and looked around. He saw panicked villagers and several shinobi trying to subdue something. When he realized just what it was, his jaw dropped. The Nine Tails was released from his seal somehow. He began to laugh. Oh, this was too good. He watched as the events displayed themselves in front of him. He hid in an alleyway, hopefully away from the fox's wrath. He saw everything and realized that Minato had a child, seemingly. A baby who had the Nine Tails sealed inside of them, eh? He looked around and body flickered to the baby. He smiled devilishly at the baby. He picked them up and disappeared with them. Everyone was too distracted by the aftermath of Kurama for them to notice Orochimaru kidnapped the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. He didn't just kidnap the baby for the fact they were the Jinchuriki either, though. Oh, no. It was also despite Minato. He hated that man with every fiber of his being. Taking his son and turning him into one of his experiments would just be glorious. When he made it back to the hideout, he immediately threw Naruto into one of the test tubes. Over the next 4 years, he would experiment with the boy. He would insert the cells of different test experiments in Hashirama into Naruto, hoping to create his greatest achievement yet. Something for him to remember, in order to modify his future bodies to also have such abilities. When he was done with the boy and released him from his test tube for the first time, the boy looked around. Orochimaru was excited. If his predictions were correct, the boy would have quite a powerful set of abilities. He was hoping for something like laser eyes and flight, but he got a bit more than just that. The boy focused his attention on Orochimaru and tried to speak. "You said Dad," and the pale man nodded. Yes, he was Naruto's dad. The boy clapped in glee and crawled over to him. He hugged the man's leg. The man smiled at first seeing this, but the pain soon shot up in his leg. He heard his bones crack in that leg, and he screamed in pain and agony. He looked down at the boy who was hugging his leg affectionately. Orochimaru never expected this. Sure, he would imagine that the boy's strength would be increased, but not at such a young age to the point where he could break bones. Kabuto rushed into the Snake Sage's aid and managed to pull Naruto off of Orochimaru's leg. The man collapsed to the ground and grabbed his broken leg in pain. Naruto was crying now that he was pulled away from what he assumed was his father. He felt his eyes itch. He opened them and immediately shot out laser beams. Kabuto immediately trampled Naruto on the ground in shock. Naruto was looking around and accidentally began to shoot down the whole construct of the hideout. His lasers were still active and he didn't know how to turn them off. He was causing too much commotion. Kabuto panicked and tried to get close to Naruto. He karate chopped the boy in the neck and knocked the boy out. Well, that was the plan anyway. Things didn't play out that well because the boy's durability appeared to be far higher than he expected. Once Naruto finished his tantrum, most of the hideout was in shambles. Almost everything was completely destroyed. Orochimaru was furious. He looked over to the sleeping Naruto with hateful eyes. All of this destruction the boy was able to cause within the span of only just a couple minutes. It just didn't make sense to him. He wanted to kill this child now. Almost all of his research was practically gone thanks to the baby's tantrum. He tried to pick himself up, but he forgot his leg was broken. As soon as he tried to stand, the pain would shoot right back up into his leg. He would gasp in pain and collapse on the floor. Kabuto tried to tend to Orochimaru's injury, but a strange figure wearing a mask walked into the room, his eyes widened at the recognition of the outfit. This was a bad situation. They were at a disadvantage. What made it worse was that this wasn't the only Anbu member. You knew that as soon as you saw one of them, there were more, not too far away from them. Orochimaru looked up and chuckled. He pointed to Naruto's resting body. He told them to take him. Every other village had a form of military power in their Jinchuriki, but the Leaf Village hadn't had one for around 4 years. He tried to negotiate with the Anbu member. He even mentioned how he made some modifications to make the boy even stronger. He imagined the Leaf was having some trouble with leverage, considering there may have been some rumors spreading about the loss of Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. Surely there would be some form of concern from the villagers. Not just that, but what about when the other villages would get news of this? He could only imagine what sort of plots they would have against the Leaf Village. The Anbu member was really contemplating what they should do here. They knew of the Snake Sage's strength, and in fact they had no chance against him one-on-one, let alone with what appeared to be his accomplice, who they imagined being of similar strength, that or having special enough skills to work beside the man. Although there were more Anbu members, Orochimaru brought up an important point. What about their Jinchuriki? Although this was kept a secret from the rest of the Leaf Village for a while now, people had started to speculate whatever happened to their Jinchuriki. They were beginning to wonder if they even had one after the incident with the Nine-Tails. It had indeed been 4 years, and Naruto ordered for an all-out search mission to find the Jinchuriki. During those 4 years, it had been stressful. Keeping the secret was absolutely necessary to retain peace, but human curiosity was taking over too much. They grit their teeth in frustration. Their mission was to find the Jinchuriki and return them to the Leaf, but Orochimaru was right. Orochimaru was right there. It looked like he was crippled somehow, considering he wasn't getting up. They wanted to capture Orochimaru and arrest him for all of his crimes against humanity, but they couldn't afford to compromise the mission. After all this time, their mission could come to an end. The burden of keeping the secret of their missing Jinchuriki, it could finally be exhaled. Before they could think any further, though, several other colleagues arrived, and the head of the Anbu, Danzo, arrived at the scene. The man had his hands folded behind his back. He didn't appear to be pleased. He looked down at Orochimaru, but never said a word. He looked up ahead of the Sonin and saw a blonde-haired boy with what seemed to be whiskers on his face. When Danzo looked back at them, they began to sweat a little. "Good job," was all the man ever said to them. He walked over to the sleeping boy and picked him up. He dropped him in their arms, and she was tasked with carrying the boy back to the village. When they asked about Orochimaru, Danzo waved them off. "Leave them," is all he said. That wasn't their mission at the moment. When they were able to make it back to the Leaf Village, the female Anbu members swiftly made it to Harusen's office and presented the man the now found Jinchuriki. The old man smiled, seeing the blonde, and applauded their efforts. He could finally breathe a sigh of relief with this burden off his chest. The next part was to catch this boy up with the rest of the other kids. He didn't know where the boy was exactly, but he needed to gain the knowledge in order to perform and not stick out like a sore thumb. Unfortunately, despite Harusen's best efforts, the boy still stuck out. Information was leaked about the boy being the Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed fox, and Naruto was continuously mistreated by the villagers. They would try to attack him and injure the boy simply for what he had inside of him, but they weren't planning on having to deal with the modifications that were done to his body over the course of the 4 years of his absence from the leaf. Naruto wasn't fazed by their attacks. Nothing that the villagers threw at him would even pierce his skin. His skin seemed to be impenetrable, and he didn't react in any sort of way when they would harass him. At best, it was a blink of surprise, but he showed no reaction of pain, which infuriated the villagers even more. What was wrong with this kid? One day, though, Naruto just snapped. Enough was enough. He did absolutely nothing to these villagers, and yet they treated him like garbage. He grabbed the fist of a grown man and crushed it in his small hands. The man howled in pain, but Naruto wasn't done with him yet. He glared at the man and felt something charge up in his eyes. Before the man knew it, two lasers coming from a little boy's eyes shot out and completely enveloped his head. Needless to say, the man was decapitated from the attack, and the other villagers panicked because of it. Since when was a Jinchuriki able to do that, and at such a young age too? The villagers ran away in fear of what Naruto just did. Several Jonin jumped in to subdue Naruto, but only a few of them tried to reason with Naruto, calm the boy down. They were the ones who were effective in controlling him. Naruto relaxed and was brought to the Hokage's office. When informed of what Naruto did, Hiruzen was in shock. This was unheard of from the boy. He found it strange that the boy took on no damage besides his clothing. He never bled. He never seemed to show any form of pain. He had an absurd amount of strength. And now he was hearing about the boy being able to shoot lasers out of his eyes? He knew Naruto's lineage, and neither side of his family held any form of Keki Genkai or affinity to a certain nature that would allow something like heat vision to be born. This was an anomaly. Just what happened to Naruto during those 4 years of his disappearance? Hiruzen sighed and informed Naruto that he should be careful when he used his abilities. He would let Naruto off the hook here, considering it was in self-defense, and it was seemingly his first time using that power. He warned him though. He told Naruto to train his powers to prevent an incident like this from happening again. He wouldn't be so lenient on Naruto's second time around. After that day, the villagers wouldn't dare to look at Naruto in fear of what he would do to them. They didn't want to end up like that poor man. Naruto listened to the third Hokage and began to train his abilities. He ended up discovering a couple of abilities during that time of training. He would go out to the forest and test out his strength, seeing how much he could limit his strength and just how far it could reach. He would test out just how powerful he could make his laser eyes and how weak he could make it. He found out eventually that he had some form of X-ray vision as well. That would come in handy. But his flight ability was the greatest of them all. Being able to fly into the sky and look down upon the villagers who looked like ants from this high felt powerful. Being able to land right in the middle of the leaf and scare the passerby felt great. Even in the academy, he felt a bit higher than the other kids. Sure, the kids would avert all their attention away from him and focus on this Uchiha kid named Sasuke, but he didn't really care. The only thing that made Naruto interested in Sasuke was because of his lineage, Uchiha. The dojutsu of that clan, the Sharingan, was what they prided themselves on. He wanted to find out if Sasuke would ever unlock those eyes in order for them to fight. He wanted to see what was stronger, him or the Sharingan. He tried to act well within the academy, but he knew they were below him. The only thing that made these guys supposedly superior to him was the fact they could make clones of themselves, but it wasn't like Naruto even needed clones. He couldn't be injured. What was the point then? He tried to talk to Hiruzen about this on multiple occasions, but the man would just wave him off, informing him that he shouldn't look so high upon himself. Humility was a good thing to have, according to him. This just got on his nerves, though. He would constantly try to show his superior abilities within the academy, but the teachers would never acknowledge his greatness. He felt like pulling his hair out sometimes. There was one time he even fought Sasuke, and the boy was absolutely no competition for him whatsoever. He just blasted him with his heat vision, and he was down for the count. Pathetic. He didn't even have to move an inch, and this was who the girls would fawn over? Blah! Disgusting. When Mizuki informed him of a way in order to graduate from the academy, he was, of course, all ears. He found it silly that he was stuck here for so long anyway. Stealing the scroll was easy, and learning this dojutsu, the shadow clone jutsu, was even easier. To think that all he had to do was just find a different form of clone creation jutsu in order to have the necessary requirements for graduating. That's all he needed? That was all? Honestly, he would have done this a long time ago if he knew about it sooner. When Mizuki informed him of his deceit, though, naturally, he was angry. Incredibly angry, honestly, livid. He couldn't believe a buffoon like Mizuki could accomplish something like that. He didn't just evaporate the man with his heat vision, though. Oh no, no. That would be too easy. Instead, he was going to test out the new jutsu he learned. Suddenly, there were around 100 shadow clones surrounding Mizuki. The man knew of his strengths. He saw him begin to sweat. Naruto smiled devilishly. He must have realized how grave of a mistake he made in tricking Naruto, of all people, to do his bidding. Well, it was too late now. All of their eyes started glowing red. He could hear Mizuki begin to beg for mercy, but that was too generous to give the man. He evaporated, and nothing of the man remained. He heard some rustling and turned around to see who it was. His eyes were still glowing red, but when he saw it was just Aruka. He relaxed his eyes. He actually didn't mind Aruka, besides the fact he wouldn't graduate him early. He'd even taken him to get some ramen before, so he was kinder towards this man. Aruka looked around and saw all the clones Naruto was able to make. He was in awe of this feat of Naruto's. Naruto just smirked at Aruka. So, do I graduate? Aruka looked back at Naruto, who had his arms folded in pride. Aruka still had his mouth open in awe, but he nodded. Naruto cheered for a couple seconds, but quickly composed himself. The next day, Naruto was officially given his headband, which he wore around his forehead as per usual. Aruka went over who would be grouped together in certain teams. When Naruto found out he was in a team with Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Haruno, he took a glance at the two and shrugged. He immediately dismissed Sakura's presence, and he did the same for Sasuke, seeing as how he hadn't shown any form of Sharingan usage. He felt he wasn't wrong in assuming that the boy probably hadn't unlocked the dojutsu yet. When he found out who would be their sensei, he immediately perked up. Kakashi the Copy Ninja. Oh, this would be interesting. And that's how I'm going to end it off for right now. Remember to comment, like, share, and subscribe. I also have a Discord server. I will leave the link in both the description and the comments below. Hopefully YouTube doesn't just delete it or something. Anyways, King Tiny X out.